Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to your United Draft to Glory franchise mode here in NHL 26. So last episode, if you did not catch it, it was quite a crazy episode. Unfortunately, we lost in round 2, but we had probably one of the most craziest games in this channel's history because we ended up going to a quadruple overtime against the Flyers. Unfortunately, we lost in it, but Simic was making some crazy saves, and it was definitely one of the more entertaining things we've seen. Now, we did get badly outshot in that overtime 40-14 because there was 4 overtimes, so it was not necessarily the best performance from our team, but it was nice to see that our goaltending was fantastic, and it gave us a chance to win and continue that series. But unfortunately, like I said, we lost in 6 games, so unfortunately not making it back to the conference finals this year, but I do think this team still has a chance to obviously do so, because I think there's going to be guys in our bottom 6 that were on like our third line, for instance, that could continue to get growth, and I think our team should be still good going into next season because we don't have a lot of big contracts up for renewal. So I think for the most part, this team should be getting better, and we should be still relatively competitive again next season, and hopefully for at least a couple more years still too, because we only have, I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe around 7 or 8 seasons left of this mode. I'm not too sure, so we kind of are running down on time. The one thing that's obviously not playing good in terms of our roster is the fact we are kind of turning into a little bit of an older roster with some guys like Klinga, for instance. He's up to 32 years of age, so he could be potentially retiring in the next 4 years or maybe longer. Paco's already 31, Miller's 31, not that he's a huge player anyways. Hromis is 30, Barrett's 30. Like, there is a lot of guys that are up there in age, but I do think for the most part, we still have that core that probably shouldn't retire in this mode, so I think that's at least good. But we are going to have some big contracts coming up for renewal again next offseason. But this offseason, we are in a good spot where most of our contracts are actually taken care of, so we aren't going to have to worry as much. The big ones obviously would be for Kuda and Ullman to be signed with us. They're both RFAs. Everybody else is a UFA pretty much, but they're all like AHLers or depth forwards. So I think from an offensive standpoint and defensive standpoint, our roster is almost going to be identical to what it was this season. Goaltending is going to be a little bit different, and I'm still not too sure exactly what I want to do with the goalie situation, because obviously Simic's going to be the starter, and Bull is actually really solid this year too. The only thing is, he's an 84 overall, and he's looking probably more for a starting job. In terms of the playoffs, he wasn't necessarily the best. Regular season, he was fantastic. But I think we should probably lean towards letting him go because he's a pending UFA, and we probably have to overspend on him as a backup. So likely there's a good chance that we'll run either Tambellini or Koch as our backup next season. Koch wasn't really good when he played this last season in the NHL, but he still should be maybe a type of goaltender that could simulate well in the playoffs because he's a lower end goaltender. Tambellini could be maybe a decent backup for the regular season, so I think what I might do is run basically Tambellini and Koch as a 2-3 option again in the NHL, kind of like what we did with Ambuhl. And then I'm assuming we'd have to kind of sign one of our other goalies for the AHL. Hextall is actually really close to being a backup too, which is not great. But we could easily sign like one of these fringe starters as a backup behind Hextall, and those two could be in the AHL, and then we could have obviously Tambellini and Koch kind of run for that backup job behind Simic. So there's a lot of options to do with the goaltending situation. There might be some young guys that end up jumping to our NHL team in terms of forwards and defense, like Mahalik, for instance, might jump on offense. I'm not too sure if guys like Foligno are going to get a lot of growth, but those guys are close to making it too. So I think we're in a really good spot. Obviously, hopefully this draft is a good one for us too, so we could just kind of add some more pieces to kind of fill out our prospect pool a little bit more so. But I'm kind of still a little disappointed we lost in round 2, but I think we're still in a good spot where we should be able to succeed before we get into any contract issues. Like I said, Lee's the big one that's up next offseason, so obviously I have to think about justifying signing him to probably a big contract, but I think he would be worth it. It's just more about if we actually have the cap space or not. So anyways, with that said, there was no comments in the last episode. Also, last time I recorded last episode, I was just getting sick, so I'm just getting over a cold now. So I apologize if my voice sounds bad or anything at all. But let's see who ends up winning the Stanley Cup, because we technically ended last episode. It was a very long episode, so I ended last episode after we lost, basically. So we still don't know who's going to be the Cup champion. It could be some former players because Boston is into the conference finals, so Will be interesting to see if Urquhart or Antonio comes away with the Stanley Cup or not before us. A lot of you guys were mad at me for letting go of Antonio. I still I think it was a good reason to let go of Antonio. Urquhart was a tough one last offseason, but it made sense still from our team perspective. So I'm not going to be too mad if the Boston Bruins end up finding a way to win a Stanley Cup. But let's find out who wins that cup, look through the awards and all that stuff for retirements. And of course, we have a big offseason ahead here as well to try and maintain our roster, and then hopefully some of our young guys are getting some good growth where they could be ready for the NHL relatively soon. I guess we'll put Malhotra back in the lineup. I don't know if the AHL team's actually still playing or not, but he's another one of our prospects. He's not going to be ready probably for next season, but I can see this guy being ready relatively soon. Like, he could be a 75 next year, so maybe 2 years out. So that'll be kind of exciting if that is the case. But it looks like the AHL team actually was eliminated, so not as much luck as we were hoping for both our NHL and AHL team, but the Calgary Flames go on to win the Stanley Cup this season. Springfield wins the Calder Cup, so Calgary on top of the NHL. I don't know if there's any former players in Calgary. We'll have to take a look at that just for fun, just to see. But the playoff bracket was Calgary and Philadelphia in the Stanley Cup Finals, so that's kind of interesting because I remember when Philadelphia used to have a goal horn that sounded similar to Calgary's. But Boston did not get to the finals, so Antonio and Urquhart got as far as we got last year, so shout out to them still for having a good run, but they didn't get there. I'm kind of surprised they actually got that far, but they must have some really good defensive players there. But it was the Calgary and Philly Cup Finals. So technically we lost to the best team in the East, and they only lost that Finals in 7 games. So I think if we would have ran into a different team in the second round, I think we could have got to the conference finals probably. So just got to watch out for teams like Philadelphia, I guess. But what is Calgary looking like? What is Calgary looking like in that playoff run? Like, any interesting players that I haven't seen in a while? Let's see. Forwards. Ricard Pessinen. I don't know if I recognize any of these dudes so far. Dave Baldwin, I remember him, I think, because I think he was also from the same team as Dave Antonio was, if I'm not mistaken, because he is Hungarian too. So I think I remember this dude when he was drafted. Yeah, he was a top 5 pick, so I think I remember him. Riley Heights still playing, of course. I don't know if I know any of these other offensive players, though. From a defensive standpoint, Zane Parekh is there. Not really surprised that he's as good as he is. Ebbett, Pogge, Healy, and Spezza. Too bad it's not Heatley, because that'd be kind of funny to see a Heatley and a Spezza. And then from a goaltending standpoint, Nicholas Prince. And what's this guy's name? Rafael Bolo. All right, so they look like they had some really good goaltending in the playoffs. And then they got a lot of offense from Zane Parekh, of course, and then some guys like Pessinen, for instance, and Murley, even Nikulin, actually, I guess, and Arcabello. So looks like they had some really good depth scoring. Took them 25 games to win the Stanley Cup, but they still won it. How many games did each round go to for them? 6 games, 6 games, 6 games, and then 7 games. So yeah, it was a long route for them to win a Stanley Cup, but they got it done. Hopefully we could do something like that down the road. In terms of awards for the season, though, they win the Stanley Cup, so that's the second Canadian team to win in the last 4 seasons, because the Jets won back in 2038. We won the President's Trophy for the second straight season, but once again, that doesn't mean nothing in terms of playoff simulation. So do we want to win it again next year? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't really know, but I know that our team wants that Stanley Cup more than it does the President's Trophy. Calgary won the Clarence of Campbell, of course, in Philadelphia, the Prince of Wales. Individual awards. Viking stat for Edmonton wins the Art Ross and the Hart, so the new McDavid of the Oilers. Zane Parekh wins the Norris. That might be the first of his career. Celebrini wins the Lady Byng. Hennessy wins the Calder for New Jersey. Pessinen the Conn Smythe. Simic won another Vezina, as we kind of expected. So Simic is a good goaltender. I know there is a lot of people being like, hey, you're overpaying on him, but sometimes if you overpay or you commit on a player, they end up maybe doing really well. Maybe sometimes they do really bad, but Simic, to me, I think he was not necessarily worth an early selection like we picked him out, but I think he's developed into being one of the better goalies in the league. We saw that in the playoff performance in that quad overtime game, how good he was. And the fact that he has now 2 Veznas in the last 3 seasons, I know we're a good defensive team in front of him in terms of overall rating and all that too, but he's been really, really good so far. So shout out to Simic, who is now a 2-time Vezina winner. Obviously no Stanley Cup yet, but hopefully that's to come. And then he also wins another Jennings, which is his second in the last 5 years, I guess, technically, or 4 years. Because, actually, no, last 5 years, I think. Would he have been a part of that 2038 one that Forster had? Because it says Forster won in 2038 and then Simic in 2039. I don't remember if Simic was on the team yet at that point. It's hard to remember, but he does have multiple Jennings in his career, which is great. Then you have Radim Mertka for the Oilers, willing to Bill Masterton. That's the second time he's won that in the last 3 years. Last year was Brad Andrews. I didn't even realize that. Did I go through the awards last season? Because I don't know if I would have remembered that Brad Andrews won it. Maybe I did notice, and I just can't remember. Anyways, Vancouver's head coach Rosa wins the Jack Adams. Dika for the Canes wins the Selke. Vikingstad the Lindsay, and Parento the Richard. AHL awards. Anybody interesting down there in the AHL win an award? So far, does not look like the case. Damn. So no awards for our AHL players. All right, well, that's fine. That is fine. As long as the guys that are down there are progressing in the right way. All right, well, let's see who ends up retiring this season. Obviously, there's the draft lottery and all that too. So, draft lottery, Seattle will have the first overall pick, followed by the New York Islanders. That's crazy, man. That team has literally had such an up and down series because they had such early picks. They had a really good defensive core at one point. Then they signed Cale Makar and all that, and the defensive core became overwhelmed. Guys like Purrington left, and now they are drafting at second overall again. So, shout out to them. Aside from that, Dallas, Florida, and Minnesota are in the top 5. All right. Also, we never even looked at this draft class yet whatsoever, so I honestly have no idea what we're going to be taking in this episode, but I'm excited to kind of look at it and seeing what options are available to us. But hopefully there is some good options, because that would make it a little bit better, just so we could keep on adding to our prospect pool. But in terms of retirements, Kent Johnson's the biggest one to retire, and the weird thing is, apparently, I guess he was injured at the end of his career, so shout out to Kent Johnson. Aside from that, Lafreniere also retires in Ottawa, which is strange. But there's a lot of 1,000-plus point players in the league that have just retired. A total of 8 of them. And then you also got a good defenseman like Luke Hughes retiring. So, decently big retirement crop. I guess I should actually go by each position. So, let's go by just forwards and then defenders. I just want to see if there's any former players that we've drafted that might have retired, because last year there was some really obscure ones that did, I think. So there is a chance that there is some former players here as well. Maybe near the bottom of the list. Let's see. The answer to that is no. What about on defense? Any former Europe United? Anybody that we completely forgot about or haven't seen in a while? Oh, this one actually. Thomas Bednar is definitely one of them, right? Yep. 5th round pick in 2027. Almost forgot about him, but he has not played since we let him go from our AHL roster. Decent AHLer. Wasn't one of our earlier NHLers, of course, too, but not a crazy good player. But he eventually became okay in terms of scoring some goals too. So shout out to Thomas Bednar, or Bednash. I don't know how it's pronounced really. I think it's Bednar though. Aside from that, nobody else that was with us on defense. From a goaltending perspective, best goalie retired was Askarov. He retires as a member of the Nashville Predators. 492 wins, so came close to a 500-win career. But not a lot of goalies retiring whatsoever this season. All right, so nothing crazy in terms of retirements. Aside from that, coaches that retire, we did not lose any AHL coach, and we did not lose any NHL coach. All right, that's fine. But I did see that John Hines retired for real coaches, in case you guys were interested in real coaches that are retiring still. I'd assume a lot of them are retired by this point, but there is, I guess, some younger ones that might be still out there. So there's that. All right. We aren't going to do any draft interviews, but I am still very curious on what this draft class has. So let's do a little bit of due diligence before I jump into the draft, obviously, and see what we actually have options to us, because we've never looked at this class whatsoever so far. So let's go by each position, I guess, and we'll go by each league maybe, just because that way we can kind of break it down a little bit easier. So actually, let's go by forwards instead of just centers, because it might add too much time to looking at this. So if we go to forwards and we go to Germany, what do we got? A medium top 9 in Christopher Renkowitz. We'll pin him, even though he's only a medium 9. Might be somebody to take in the later round if there's nothing else. There's also Tobias Schroeder. Nothing crazy. Once again, we'll just pin those dudes just because why not? But Germany definitely a little bit bare, it looks like. So that's unfortunate. What about Switzerland? Kane is an early pick. Unfortunately, we won't be able to draft him because we're not drafting top 10. But Devin Kane would have been a solid option. Unfortunately for us, though, the best option from Switzerland that we can pick is Brian Georges, and he's only a low 9. So far early on, this might be one of the worst classes we're running into, which is not ideal. Let's look at Czechia. Czechia has some low 9s as well, and Stumple, Melikar, and Ensena as a medium bottom 6. Yeah, so far the first 3 leagues that are usually the ones with the most don't really have a lot, so I am not too optimistic about this class right now. Austria has absolutely no prospects this year. What the hell is this? Oh no. This is not good. We might have to rely on drafting a lot of Norwegian players, Danish players this year, because obviously we can't draft Swedes and Finns, but this class is really bare. This guy's supposed to go top 2. Obviously, we can't get Chuck Klimchuk, which is such a funny name. I didn't even realize that when I was looking at it. Chuck Klimchuk. What a name. What a name. But yeah, Chuck Klimchuk, if we had a draft lottery pick, we would obviously go for a guy like that. I don't think Lees is going to fall to us, but he would have been probably the pick if we were drafting a little bit earlier, but we'll still have him pinned anyways. Aside from that, a lot of Swedes, which obviously we can't take any of them, or Finns. There is a Polish guy, but he's probably supposed to go undrafted, so I think we might literally have the worst class possible here this year, which is not great, but at the same time, at least we're decent right now still, so it's not a huge issue, but it could be an issue down the road. Let's go to Finland. Wow, this year might be the least we've seen for players we could pick up. There's a Polish guy, low top 9, no again. And there's a Norwegian right there. Oh my goodness. I feel like there's not hardly anything we could pick this year. This is like the first year that it's actually been a bit of a problem. Allsvenskan generates nothing. Russia might not have any Polish guys. Do they have any Polish dudes? Does not look like it. Holy moly. Well, this class is absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like, none of these guys might even make the NHL. It's that bad. Because the best in terms of potential that we could actually draft here. Oh, there's a Swiss guy. I missed him. Oh, yeah, actually, no, I didn't miss him. He was supposed to go early. I forgot about Kane again. The best guy we could probably get is Harold Lees, but he might be going before our selection. I'm really hoping he's still there at our selection, but I don't know if he will be. If we can't get Lees, literally we're going to be stuck with taking Renkowitz first round. And he's supposed to be going 5th or so round, I think. So, yeah, this is definitely the worst class we've ran into, which is very, very unfortunate. But at the same time, I guess it's okay, because since there was no comments in the last episode, you guys didn't have to give me any feedback on this draft class. And it's good I didn't really need your feedback on it, too, because I just know that this is probably the worst class we've ran into. So let's hop on in and hope that that one guy that was supposed to actually go first round is still available, because if he isn't, we're getting stuck with a bunch of shit, basically. So, anyways, let's take a look at this year's top 5. Seattle at number 1 is going to take Klimchuk. So, Chuck Klimchuk goes first overall. That's kind of neat. The meme himself. So, you could call him Klimchuk if you want to. I don't even know, but that's one of the funny names we've seen. New York Islanders at number 2 will select Kultanen. So, I'm surprised Klimchuk went first overall, but the Islanders get a little bit of a gift offensively with Kultanen from Finland. I thought he was supposed to go first, but guess not. Dallas at 3 will take Rolston, who is a 2-way defenseman, Adrian Rolston. Interesting. Looks like he's got a good shot. Pretty much decent in everything because he's a 2-way. Florida at 4 will select Durand, 76 overall, medium elite. Not NHL ready yet, but still will probably become a really good assister at some point in time. And Minnesota at 5 will select Skewen, 81 overall, 2-way forward. All right. So a decent top 5 compared to some years, but at the same time, the depth in it just doesn't seem that good for us. Like, we really got unlucky. We do have the 29th overall pick, so maybe we'll get lucky that that guy is still there. Maybe we will. Let's see. So far, looks like maybe. Let's see. Is Lee still there? He is! Thank goodness. Okay, well, at least that means our first round selection will be a decent-ish player, maybe. But aside from that, we're literally drafting a bunch of nothing. Like, there's not even a goalie we could draft this year, right? Oh, there is a checking and medium elite goalie. I did not even realize that. Okay, that's actually decent to pin. I did not look at goal. Oh, I was only looking at forwards. Wasn't I? Was I just looking at forwards only, not defensemen? Oh, that's why. Okay, maybe I need to call a timeout here. I was absolutely stupid. It's because I'm just getting over a cold, but I would literally, when we were just scouting out those players, there was only forwards I was looking at. I forgot that I only put it to forwards. So there is probably a lot of good defensemen in this class we might be able to get. So let's go back to this draft class and look at defenders. And let's go back through those leagues again. Why the heck did I act so dumb? Oh, well. Anyways, Germany, there's a medium 6. Yeah, see, there is more options to us now. I was going to say, because that seemed like such a bare class. There is this medium 6 for a first rounder, but he's not that crazy. Nothing else there. There is a medium elite defensive defenseman that's 19. Nice. Okay, that's a second round option for sure. All right, yeah, there's definitely a stronger defensive draft class than a forward draft class. So I guess we're mostly going to be drafting defenders aside from the first round. And in Austria, it does have some people too. All right, it's just a lot of defensemen. All right, yeah, I was going to say, because usually there's at least some players that we could draft for each round, but this year it did not look like it, but I was just being stupid because I had it sorted. I completely forgot I did that. Lovejoy as a second rounder is not bad, but he's going to go mid-second round, so we probably won't be able to get him, but there's at least a little bit more options to us, but we probably will have to draft a lot of defenders this season. Any Polish people still? No. What about goaltenders in this draft class? We did see there was a medium-elite checking goalie, so that's going to be good to probably grab. There is a French goaltender. That's the only goalie in Germany right now. Kelvin Seu. We might as well pin him, even though he's supposed to go undrafted for fun. Rizzy's a medium elite goaltender as well from Switzerland. Like, if we already want to look for future goaltenders, we can. Even though we already have a lot of them right now, technically. Aside from that, Czechia, we already pinned Lintner. Doesn't seem like there's still a lot of goalie options, but we'll pin a couple of them just in case. Just in case. Norwegian goaltender. All right. But yeah, I don't know why I was dumb on that. So if you guys commented beforehand that I was being dumb, at least I realized that I was dumb too. So there you go. All right. We already know our first round selection. It's still going to be that same guy, I think, in Lee's, because Banting is only a medium 60. We might as well grab ourselves a right winger. That's probably going to be a medium 6. Probably around a 63 overall, my guess. Does have a weakness in character, which is unfortunate, but at this point, we could care less about your character. Let's take you and bring you into this team. So Harold Lees, welcome aboard. 63 or 60, yeah, 63 overall, but only a medium 9. Damn, I was thinking he was guaranteed to be a medium top 6. That's unfortunate, but he is a power forward, and since he's a first rounder, he'll probably develop. But yeah, that's unfortunate that his potential is not as good as we expected, but he could still end up becoming a useful bottom 6 forward or something like that. And we don't really have a lot of power forwards, so I don't mind that selection. All right, let's simulate to 62 now, see what else is on the board here. But, oh, Lintner just went. Damn, that sucks. That's one of the medium elite goalies we were maybe thinking about taking from Czechia. But he goes to the Sharks. That's okay. We do have a logjam in goal, so it's not a huge issue, but would have been nice to get somebody with at least a good potential here. Cohen is that medium elite DFD, though. I guess we might as well go with that. Because technically, if we end up losing, I guess, say if we end up losing Lee on our defensive core, we could always use another defensive prospect. So Kelly Cohen, he's 19 years old, which is not necessarily ideal, but he is the best option here, I think, at this point. So let's take the 19-year-old DFD since he's got potential. 54 overall. All right. I'll definitely take something like that. Obviously not going to be maybe the craziest elite player, but even if he becomes a top 6 or a top 4, it still gives us depth on defense, which is something that I think is kind of still lacking a little bit in terms of prospects. So we might as well bring him in. All right. Couple more rounds to go that are actually matter, I think. Let's see what else we got. Maybe a medium 4 range of Singh, but tough to say. Probably a low 4 or a medium 6 like Karkner is. But yeah, this draft class is definitely more defensive heavy for us because there's not a lot of good forwards in it. Unless we want to go for a low 9 at Stumple, but he's 17 with a good shot. I mean, that's kind of cool that he's got a good shot, but the fact he's only a low 9 means he's going to become an AHL scorer probably at best. Is there anybody with good potential here still? There is that other medium elite goalie in Rizzy. Do I really need to add to a logjam of goaltenders? 4 years out. 4 years from now, we would be probably still needing some more goaltenders, I'd assume, at some point. We might as well just do it, or we could probably wait till a later round because he's supposed to go later, and then just take more to fill out our roster. So let's do that. Let's go for Ramjit Singh with the selection, I guess, just because he might have the best potential of the bunch here. Medium top 60, that's kind of what I expected. 60 overall is not bad, but yeah, this draft class just doesn't really have much for us, but I was kind of hoping the first rounder would at least be a medium 6, but it seems like every round in this class is going to be pretty much hit or miss, or mostly miss, I should say. There's another low 4 who's listed as a gem and an offensive defenseman. I love myself low 4 offensive defensemen that are gems because I've had some really good success with one way back in the day. Ooh, those attributes are nice too. Shooting, puck skills, senses. Like, from an offensive standpoint, I know he's 20 years old, but this guy looks like he actually could develop to becoming a really good offensive defenseman. And he maybe could be a replacement for Paco at some point if Paco retires. So we're going to go for the low 4 and Carter Gormley. You don't usually see a low 4 with these good of attributes, even at the age of 20. And the fact that he's a gem makes me think even better of this selection. So Carter Gormley is going to be the selection here. 65 overall. That's a pretty solid starting point. If we play him in the AHL soon, he could generate a lot of growth, but also since he's a low 4, maybe he'll just generate a lot of growth unsigned as well. But he's got an 89 passing rating. His offensive awareness is only a 76, but if this guy gets growth in those areas, he could be a lethal passer. His shooting's only a 2-star, but his puck skills are off the charts. So we just need to develop him in offensive awareness and shooting, and maybe his skating a bit, and maybe he could become something decent for us offensively. If not, he could become a really good OFD in the AHL or something like that. But he was a gem, so I'm expecting growth from him. All right, so that's an interesting selection there, kind of, all things considered. Rizzy is still there. Do I really need to take a goaltender, though? Do I really need to? He's 19. How old is the other goaltender? 19 as well. You know what? Since he's a gem, we're going to take him. I like my gems. Rizzy, let's bring you in. 60 overall. Wow, that's actually higher than I expected for him to start out of the gate. So it is probably because he's 19, but might as well take another goalie prospect because we are going to be letting go of Van Boel probably this offseason. So our goaltending situation, aside from Simic, is kind of like a revolving door. We might as well continuously feed our backup position. And even if we have the craziest depth in goaltending in the world, we might as well have another one just to basically give us that option in case of injuries and all that type of thing. So I'll take that. There's not really much else to draft to anyways. So round 6. There's a Pollock, but he's a low 7th OFD. That's not crazy. Anybody with good potential that we can take? Obviously, this defenseman's probably a low elite, but he's from Sweden, unfortunately, so we can't take him. He's a gem as well. Georges technically is the guy with the best potential, is a low 9. That's not very good, but he might have to be our 7th round selection. So I guess by that logic, actually he's technically the best. Should I go for a low 7th offensive defenseman? Probably not, but we're going to take him since he has the last name of one of our other defenders. 57 overall. Pretty trash. In our last selection of the draft, we're going to have to probably go with Sena because I guess the other guy went earlier. Hummel's there too, but he's unknown. We're just going to go for Peter Sena. It's not the actual one that played for the St. Louis Blues in a day. It's a different spelling, I think, for his first name. But we're going to take this guy anyways. Boom. 53 overall. All right. Well, I would say that's probably one of the most uneventful draft classes we've had. Our first rounder only being a medium 9. The medium elite Cohen is cool. Gormley is that low 4 is intriguing. Not sure if he's going to be good or not. And then Rizzy is a medium elite goalie. He's decent. Other than that, I don't know about this class. I honestly don't. but we had to make do with what we have. And hopefully the rest of this offseason is a little bit better for us. Like I said, at least it's an easy re-sign stage, so I'm not too worried about losing anybody. But I'm not too sure on our cap space. We also got to bring back a lot of our coaches, apparently. So let's try and get Mr. Tourney re-signed as our head coach. And it's still glitched out that I could only give him 110K. So maybe it's because he's a real coach or something, but that happened last time we had to re-sign him. So if he rejects this, we will definitely try and still sign him as a free agent coach. But let me just make sure I write down Tourney's name so I actually remember who he is, because he might go to free agency and then we might have to still bring him back. Wallin is still going to be our assistant coach. I know he wants to be a head coach, but we are definitely going to sign him back as an associate just to make sure our coaching depth is as good as possible still, because that will help us assimilate really well. And an AHL head coach, I would like to hold on to this guy. He still wants to be an AHL head coach, which is good. So we'll definitely hold on to Quincy down there in the minors. Perfect. So coaches are dealt with. What about scouts? Do we need to bring back any scouts? Yes, we do. Let's get them signed up as well, just so we actually get that done with here. Scouts always are the most, one of the most tedious parts, I feel like, about the offseason, but they do an important job in the draft to glory, so we want to make sure that we bring them all back. All right, that should be most of them. There looks like there's a couple down here near the bottom of the list. Donald Newberry and what's your name? Probably like Gregory or Grigory. Oh, Gustavs. I'm not surprised. That was probably another name I would have thought of, just because he is our Russian scout, I think. Boom. That should be good. No scouts listed with an expiring contract. That's kind of funny now because we did it beforehand. And let's get to this re-sign part. All right. What do we got? $12 million in cap space is pretty low. See, that's the one thing that's a bit scary with this team is our cap situation. Like, we're going to probably have to... We might have to make some bottom six changes, potentially. Here. I am going to let go of a couple of the guys that have been in the AHL for a while and were former NHLers, Nick Nichols, for instance. I'm going to have to let him go just to free up more roster space. Same goes with Camper. These guys are getting too old. I know they're decent. Retzer's 76. That's decent overall still. I'm going to let go of Helmer, though, before him. I got to clean house a little bit in the AHL team. Let's go with Retzer, at least a one-year deal still, just to make sure the AHL team stays competitive. Zeiler is actually a 72 at 20. That's actually pretty good, so we could definitely bring him in as just a filler option. Dimitra, I could replace you probably with one of the guys I just drafted, realistically. Not going to give Mui his ELC. Same goes with Schmidt. A lot of these guys that we've drafted these last 2 years in the later rounds are just absolute trash, so unfortunately we can't give a lot of them ELCs. We'll come back to the other UFAs. I know for a fact Dane Bull's going to be gone here because he's going to demand too much, right? 2.7 is not bad. He actually does have interest in our organization, but when we have other goalies like these two, it's just not reasonable to actually bring them back. Tambolini only wants 900K, so I'm going to give him 900K, even if that walks him to free agency. And then Koch will give you 900K as well. And he already immediately accepts that. Okay, that's good. So the most expensive is going to be Kuda for sure. Dolak for the AHL. We might as well re-sign all these RFAs here for the AHL. Just give them one-year deals, though. Just because we can't give them too long-term contracts. Or else that's when we get into a little bit of issues with the amount of contracts we have. So let's get them all signed up here. Some of them will probably be UFAs next year and let go of, but for now we might as well hold on to some of that depth we have in the minors, just because that AHL team has made the playoffs and they can probably win a Calder Cup if they stay competitive. Appleby only wants 1275. You know what? That's actually not bad. We are going to talk you down, though, because you have the organizational interest. And it would walk him to a UFA status, but we might as well use him as a depth forward for 2 years. I'm okay with that. Ullman, what do you want? What do you want? Oh, $3 million for a top six defenseman. I don't think we really have any other option for that top six pairing. Because if we look at our defensive core, Maltby technically is a UFA, and I probably could let go of him and use somebody else as a depth option. There's not really another defenseman that's really going to jump up yet. Krejci might jump up soon. Same with Knowles, but they're not ready yet. So I think we got to give Ullman what he's asking for, almost like not fully what he's asking for, but I got to bring him back. There's just no way about that, or else I have to run a low-end defenseman as a top 6. And I'd prefer Ullman over Maltby, to be honest. 3-year deal, what could I get you down to as a top 6? Not really that much lower. 2.95 is still actually a pretty bargain deal for a top 6 defenseman, I feel like. I could get him for less if I give him a clause, but it seems weird to give him a clause. Also, I don't want to have to run into issues where I have to keep him in the NHL. If I go lower than that, he wants less money. Would I want to... I probably want to give him a 2-year deal, though, realistically. But then he will want, like... Let's see. Like, closer to his actual asking price. He'd want, like... yeah, he actually would want way more than that. So we probably have to give him that 3rd year on the contract, unfortunately. Because I was debating about only doing 2 years just because that way we could make sure that we have him gone by the time Krejci's ready. But 3-year deal at 2.95, honestly, I think I'm okay with that. I could qualify him and get him for only a 1-year deal, but I think for a top 6 defenseman, 2.95, honestly, is not bad. So let's just do that. And he might be in the top 4 too if we end up losing somebody huge in the top 4, but I hope that's not the case. I really hope not. Ullman is also the only guy that's actually still listed as a top 6 because everybody else is a top 4. So, Kuda, are you listed as a second liner now? Yes, you are. That's not what I wanted to see. That might mean a decent asking price. 3.8 for 1 year, and then he's an RFA again. He's going to be more expensive next offseason, but I can't really do multi-year deals right now with some of the people being free agents soon. So I guess I could give him a 1-year deal as like a trial run to see if he's ready for a big boy contract. Let's do it. Sure. 1-year deal, and we already got everybody else, I think, dealt with on that. So UFA-wise, though, I am for sure letting go of Van Boel. I know he was a fantastic backup option for us, but with 2 other NHL-ready goalies, it just does not make sense to hold on to him. So, Boel, best of luck. You're probably going to go on and win a Stanley Cup against us or something, but I have to do it. Just doesn't make sense to have 4 NHL-ready goalies anymore. Miller as a depth option would be okay. Yeah, he only wants $900K. That's a bargain deal, and that's why I like people like Miller. He's willing to take a pay cut. He is going to get actually just over $1 million because of the 1 year instead of 2 years. I could give him a 2-year. You know what? I'll give him a 2-year. I think 2 years at $900K, which is league minimum basically on a one-way deal, is reasonable. I think it's reasonable. And we could always send it to the AHL if for some reason we have somebody take over a spot. But Edgar Miller is a decent depth option. He could help us out defensively too, so let's do it. He is 31, but I'll take him. Maltby as a depth defenseman would be good, but he's going to be complaining about ice time. But we could still hold on to him because nobody else is going to be ready for that spot. So I am going to do a 1-year deal for him at 1.7. Considering he still has the organizational interest, I think he'll accept that. It is a weird bringing him back as a depth option again, considering he's going to be low on morale again. But I just can't use a 74 or 75 as a depth defender right now. So let's do that and hold on to him. And then Barrett, I think we still need Barrett potentially. But there is Mahalik that could replace him potentially. So Barrett, I could use him as a depth option too, just like Miller. So if he's not asking for too much, I probably will re-sign him. Let's see. 2.2. If I lower this, I could get him to under 2 million. 1975 honestly is not bad either. I think I should be able to get him for that. You know, I'm going to try and just hold on to all these guys at that price point. If they're wanting under $2 million, like if I said, if they need to play in the AHL, so be it. But I think it's the right move for us to try and just hold on to as much depth as possible. So let's do that. All right, so Tourney said that he'll accept their offer. See, he's not entirely... Oh, actually, he doesn't like the role that we gave him, which is weird because he's getting a head coaching job. But I couldn't give him more than 100K, but he will still accept the minimum, which is kind of funny. So I don't know what's about that, why I can't give him more than that, but that's kind of funny. That's multiple times that he's accepted the lowest amount of money he can make, but he'll still stay as our head coach. Anybody reject our offer? I don't think anybody will. because we're in a pretty good spot here. It doesn't look like anybody rejected. I am thinking and still letting go of Dimitra for the AHL and signing Gormley. I think everybody else could stay unsigned, but I think I might sign Gormley because of his passing. And I think if he gets playing time right out of the gate, that could be useful for him considering he's already 20. So I am going to let go of Dimitra in replacement of Gormley. Or Gormley going to replace him. And I think that's basically the only AHL major move on the defensive core. All right, so everybody is done with the contracts. That's good. Let's simulate to free agency here. I'm curious if any former players are in free agency too. Not that I would bring anybody back depending on how much cap space we have, but I don't think there's really a spot I could target in the NHL. So apparently our AHL head coach didn't even come back, so we got to get him back here. So let's get that done with before I forget, because the AHL team is very important still. Where are you, Quincy? Where are you? Let me sort by alphabetical. Maybe he's not even an AHL coach anymore. Yeah, I guess he's not considered an AHL coach, but he wanted to be an AHL head coach, it said. So that's kind of strange. Let's see if we can find him. Just so I could bring him back and make sure that AHL team is still staying competitive. He wants to be an NHL head coach. It said AHL head coach when I offered him the contract, though. Maybe it was just the role that was like that. So I don't know if we're going to be able to bring him back, but we're going to still try. We're going to still try and get him to being our AHL head coach. So let's go with that. See if he'll accept. Hopefully he will. All right. Let's, for fun, take a look and see if any former players of ours headed to the free agent market. How much money do we got, out of curiosity? 6.75. What a surprise. Is there anything that I drastically actually still need to on this team? We have a great defensive core. Doesn't need work. Forward group, we have pretty good depth, I would say. Maybe a little bit of a logjam on offense, but Cutler is going to be a full-time player this year. Obviously, there's a chance some other guys might come up from the AHL. We obviously have Henry Mahalik, so I don't think we need anything, but I still want to see if any former players are headed to the market again that we could keep an eye on, just to see if they sign anywhere else. Obviously, goaltending. Oh, Forster's back to free agency. He wants $9.1 million now. Did he have that crazy of a year last year? Yes, he did. He was really good in Utah. Really, really good. 46 games with a 914. Did not get to the playoffs, but maybe he was injured or something. I don't even know. But shout out to Akeem Forster. Still playing good in other teams. He had 2 assists with Utah, but now he's looking for big money on the free agent market again. And he wants 6 years at the age of 30, so he's looking for somebody to retire with. Gotch is there as well. Shout out to Gotch. We already seen him before because obviously he was in Philadelphia, I think. Or no, he's in Columbus in the first round. Aside from that, any other former players that are kind of interesting just to see where they're doing? Let's see. Defensively, I don't see anybody so far. Who is this Griffin dude? Michael Griffin. Damn, I was hoping that'd be Morgan Griffin. Because shout out to Morgan Griffin from the Houston Sharpshooter series years ago. He's a low 4 that basically became really good. So I'm hoping Gormley's like that. If Gormley's like that, that'll be insane. Just Gormley's got to get obviously really good growth in the AHL, which is obviously what we're hoping for this season. Just still looking and seeing if there's any former players on the free agent market. Looks like a lot of guys must have re-signed with the teams that they signed with last year, so that's at least good for them. So some of them must have solidified the rest of their career in certain places. But yeah, I don't really see any former players aside from Mr. Goaltender. And I'm losing my track on name again, and I don't know why. Mr. Goaltender is Forster, jeez. Yeah, Forster and Bull and Gotch, all 3 of these guys used to be in our system. And all 3 of them are going to be on different teams now. I guess the only one we need to take a look and see where he signs in the start of the season is Forster, or actually Bull, technically, I guess. We could look through all 3 of those if we want to, but is there anything else I need to do? I could do some off-season focuses. I guess I probably should, at least for Gormley in the AHL, because we want to make sure his offensive awareness gets higher. Because I think he's a prospect that could really surprise us with his amount of growth. So, considering he was a gem, I feel like he could literally become Morgan Griffin 2.0 if we get his offensive awareness really high up. So, I really hope we can. Because that passing grade is already an 89. Like, his puck skills are NHL caliber, but everything else needs to be worked on, I think. NHL-wise, I don't think we have a lot of young players anymore, so it doesn't really matter, I think, to focus on any of these guys that much. Maybe Cutler again. Cutler's a guy that his offensive awareness isn't super high, but he's got decent shooting, I think. So let's try and get him to improve a little bit just because he could be a very big, important player to this team in terms of development for our prospect pool. So I think that's all we really need to focus on. Let's begin to sim up to next season. And looks like Quincy is back as the AHL head coach. But let's see what our team is looking like going into next year. And hopefully this team is primed up to win a Stanley Cup. We could win another President's Trophy, but I would prefer the Stanley Cup just because the President's Trophy puts a lot of pressure on us come playoff time. So we don't really want that pressure on us. We want to be able to go into the playoffs maybe with like an average record and surprise a lot of teams that we end up playing against, in my opinion. All right, let's get this roster set up and see who is going to be our scratches and who's going to be wearing the lineup. But starting off with the goaltenders, of course, we have Simic and Tambellini. We are going to be calling up Koch. Actually, I didn't sign one of the other goaltenders, so I guess I can't leave Koch in the AHL to start. And then just run Koch and Hextall down there as that crazy 1-2 punch. And then if I need another goalie in the NHL, we could call them up. Like I'd probably call up Hextall if there's an injury. And then come playoff time, we could run either of the 4 goalies we have. Because Tambellini's an 83, so he's going to be in the same stats as Ambull at the end of the season, probably and gone. But I think we'll run this for 1 season, maybe. From a defensive standpoint, Lee Paco, Powell, Pollock, Richardson, Ullman, and there's Maltby as that 7th defenseman. He's going to be losing morale. He's listed as a top 4 now, too. How is he listed as a top 4? He was literally a 79, I think, too. That's insane. Well, is there another defenseman I could call up? There is Foligno as an actual depth defenseman at 22. Nold's obviously a medium 4. I'm not calling him up. I could use Foligno as a depth defenseman, realistically. Because he doesn't have a huge ceiling. He could be still a good defenseman, knows the thing, but there's also like Krejci still. So, you know what? I'm going to call up Foligno as the depth defenseman, and then Maltby is going to be a scratch in the AHL. It's not that there's anything against Maltby, but he's just... I maybe should not have re-signed him, but at the same time, I just don't think it makes sense to play a guy that's listed apparently as a top 4 as a depth defenseman. It doesn't really make much sense to play him in the AHL either, for that matter, but let's give Foligno a chance as a depth defenseman, considering he's a right-handed shot. And that way, at least everybody kind of plays in their position. Like, we have 3 top 2s, 2 top 4s, a top 6, and a depth defenseman. Richardson's still going to be low on ice time, but this defensive core is still really good. From a right-wing perspective, Romas, Nakamura, McElhaney, and Appleby. Nobody else here is worth calling up yet. Malhotra did grow a little bit more, so that's good. Left wingers, Klinga, Kuda, Cutler, and Berkowitz. Kind of funny saying Kuda and Cutler at the same time almost. Yeah, that looks good. These guys are all third-line scorers and above those, so there's definitely going to be some people not liking their ice time unless I give them power play time or PK time. Centers, we have Rankin, Green, Fernandez, Miller, and Barrett. Barrett's apparently only a 74, but he's a third-line scoring forward, so that's morale-related for sure. Same goes with Fernandez, but those should correct themselves. Henry should not be in the AHL. Mahalik probably shouldn't be either, for that matter, though. I am going to call up Henry, though, for sure, because he's listed as a 4th liner. I want to get Mahalik in there because he was a first-round pick. But by that logic, I would have to send down... I could send down Miller. Because he was, like I said, that guy that I could move around. But we have to have a depth. We have 1 depth defender. We'd have to have 2 depth forwards. So right now, the depth forwards would be Appleby. And it would probably, they would scratch Barrett. But I would probably be scratching Miller out of the 2. So technically, whoever I call up here would have to be a depth forward. So I think if I send Barrett down, I could still use Miller as a depth forward. But he is listed as a third-line scoring forward? I didn't expect that when I saw that. God damn it. I thought he was a depth forward, though. This league must be really, really weak. I think... I don't want to send down Barrett, really. But he is more of an offensive player in a bottom 6 role. I could play him in the AHL too. So you know what? We're going to send Barrett down, call up Mahalik, and then I might use Miller still as a depth option. But he will probably complain about ice time at first, but hopefully his role changes back to depth forward. But that way we could get Mahalik some playing time on the third line. Henry could center the fourth line. And then Fernandez could be playing obviously still in the top six as a winger. So I think that's good, but I also don't like having to send some people down to the AHL, but it is what it is. Sometimes you have to maneuver things like that. So let's go best lines, get this set up here. So first line obviously is going to stay the same. Klinga, Green, Hiromis, Nakamura, Rankin, and we want McElhinney in this spot because that's what we've been running. Kuda can play with not Henry. He's got to play with Cutler. Ooh, Cutler's a third line scoring forward too. Not good face-off stats. Kuda doesn't have good face-off stats. I don't think Berkowitz did either. Yeah, he doesn't. Oh, boy. Can any of these guys win face-offs that are wingers? McElhinney can. And Nakamura can. I probably could use McElhinney as a center. And that way I can put Kuda back up to here and get Berkowitz onto that third line like he's supposed to be. So we'll run something like that for a difference. I don't really like having McElhinney as a third line center. But we need people that can win face-off in those positions. Actually, wait a second. We also still have to make a change in terms of who's in the lineup. So let's actually readjust this again for a second here. And we want Henry down on that fourth line for a second here. Miller's going to come out of the lineup. Mahalik's going to draw in. Fernandez cannot be scratched. That's definitely a problem. Oh my goodness. I don't really like what's going on right now. Let's take Mahalik back out here. Get Fernandez in. Fernandez needs to be in the top six. For sure. So, well, let's do a swap like that. So, Fernandez, Rankin, Nakamura. McElhinney's going to have to get demoted, I think, to that third line center spot. I don't want Berkowitz on the fourth line, though. Playmaker, sniper. Kuda's a two-way, so Kuda's listed as a second line forward, though. That's the problem. If I move him down to the fourth line, he's not going to be happy. Berkowitz, I could give him power play time, but this is such a weird lineup right now. We might have too many cooks in the kitchen. I don't want to scratch Mahalik either, so I probably would move Henry over to the right wing and then put Mahalik down the middle. Ooh, that makes it a -2? No, a -1. Oh, no, it is still a -2. I can't do that because McElhinney can't be a fourth liner. Oh, boy, what do I do here? What if I go Henry down the middle, Mahalik as a third liner? Okay, that fixes it a little bit. But Kuda should not be in this spot because he's a third line. He's literally a second liner. Why is he a second liner as an 83? That's literally the problem here. Because Berkowitz and like Cutler are going to be second liners next season probably. Oh my goodness. I don't like McElhinney in the spot either. I guess I have to run Mahalik as a fourth liner just because or else Kuda's not going to be happy. But I don't like a -2. So, okay, if I swap the two of those guys, it works. But Cutler being a fourth liner, probably not a right spot for him. But if we're thinking realistically on who should be on the power play, there's a lot of people that should be. So Klinga needs to be on the power play. Green needs to be on the power play. Hiromis, Nakamura, Rankin, Fernandez, Berkowitz, Henry, Cutler, maybe even Kuda. All those guys should probably be on the power play. And that's 10 players, which means no defenseman would get any power play time. Defensively, Liam, Paco, and Polak, and Pau should all have power play time. So we're in a really bad spot in terms of having way too many people. I might have to send some people down, even if they're NHL talents. Like, if I send Cutler back to the AHLs in 81 just to help out with his development a little bit more, is that a bad thing? And would that hurt our team a bit? Because even Miller is going to complain, like I said, about ice time being a third line scoring forward. So we're in a really bad logjam right now. And I'm not too sure what to do. The game wants to put Rankin on the first power play unit, which I would prefer to put Roger there. So I'm going to already make that adjustment. But I need your guys' opinions on a lot of this stuff. Because this might be the biggest cluster fuck I've ever put myself into. And I'm not too sure if I put myself into it or basically the league did, because this league is really, really weak. And there's no reason why an 83 should be a second line forward. Fernandez is being a second line forward. He needs power play time for sure, or else he's going to be not happy. So we got to be taking somebody like probably Berkowitz or Kuda off the power play, I guess, and then he'd be getting mostly penalty kill time. I honestly don't even know. How do I satisfy the needs of every single player on this team without them complaining? Oh boy, that's not good. What about penalty kill? What does penalty kill look like? Henry, yeah, we could take guys like Karomis off the penalty kill and go like Kuda instead. Go with the full-on defensive forwards on the penalty kill. Take Klinga off and all that stuff. And then the power play could be the more offensively minded people. I guess we could look at like defensive awareness as a thing too. Like, for instance, Cutler might be an offensive forward, but he's got 87 defensive awareness, so he could maybe be a penalty killer. McElhinney, obviously, with the 99 defensive awareness, could be a penalty killer and power play guy. So, yeah, maybe we'll go off awareness on which special teams people should be on. But it's really tough to get all these guys the ice time they deserve. Miller might complain too, so I might have to send Miller down about his ice time. And then maybe I call up somebody like Retzer as a depth option just because he won't complain. I mean, that would be okay for that scratch perspective. Oh man, the AHL's even in a weird jam too. They have two little forwards, so Gormley's playing right now as a forward, which he shouldn't be. Maybe we don't want any depth forwards in the NHL, and then we'll just call up people if we need them. You know what? I think for now I'm going to just literally have that one depth defenseman in Foligno, because we obviously have enough defensemen in the AHL. But we have two little forwards down there, so for the time being, I'm literally going to send Miller down so he's not going to complain, because he will actually get to play in the lineup down there in the AHL. And if we get into any injuries on forwards, we'll call up somebody from the AHL if we need to. And then Gormley could play back into his actual position on defense. And we will be taking Maltby out of the AHL lineup just because, yeah, he shouldn't be there. And Gormley, I think, will get a really good chance to develop into being something decent. He will be getting first-line power play time as well. I don't think Barrett should be really down here either, but he's literally listed as a third-line scoring forward, so... Oh man, this is a really weird end to the episode. I expected it to be a little bit easier with how our lines were going to be set up, but this has been all over the place. Furchner is actually close to making it too. Maybe we do have guys that we could call up as actual depth forwards, and that way we get those guys in the right positions. But like I said, I don't really like using Cutler, Berkowitz in these positions. Berkowitz actually may be okay in that spot. Cutler's not as great as a fourth line option. Kuda being a third liner, but should be listed as a second liner. McElhinney, same type of boat. It's a lot. It's a lot to take care of. And it's Simic and Tambellini in net. All right. Yeah, I think we'll just keep the two depth forwards. One depth forward, one depth defender. And the other depth forward we'll call up if we really get into trouble with injuries this season. All right. I know this episode's kind of running a little bit long now at this point, so we are going to do a final few things to end off this episode, which I guess we need to find out where Ambuhl signed. We'll also look where Forster and Gosh signed just for fun too, because they're former goalies, of course. But I also want to check the draft class too already, I think, just to see what there is for us potentially this year. But Ambuhl signed with the Nashville Predators. And Nashville won a cup a few years ago, so he might have a chance to win a cup before us again. 2-year deal, 1.805, great contract for him. And if he's their starting goaltender, he's going to have a really good shot. And it sucks that, like I said, to let him go because he was actually a really good backup goaltender, but it just doesn't make sense to have 4 NHL-ready goalies. We technically have that right now, so if we signed him again, we'd have 5 NHL-ready goalies. So, yeah, it just didn't make sense. Aside from that, where did Forster sign? And where did Gotch sign? I don't know if Forster's going to get what he was asking for just because of his age, but let's see. Probably some team overpaid on him, I would assume. I want to go goalies. Toronto. Why did you sign with the team I hate the most? Actually, never mind. That's the Habs probably. But 6-year deal at 9.78. So Akeem Forster is getting paid and he'll probably retire as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is not great, but it is what it is. I still miss him, kind of. I kind of wish maybe I held on to him longer, but at the same time, we've had so many goalies that's really tough to hold on to people like him, but Gotch, what do we got for the Gotch? Where did he sign? Not that he was as important here. Florida. All right. He got a 1-year deal in Florida. All right, so he might be a free agent again next year. Not a surprise. All right, last thing we got to take a look at is briefly the draft class for the upcoming year, and that'll be it for this episode. At least our team should be still good this season, but I'm really skeptical about getting people ice time on this roster, so let's not just go by forward, so that way we don't screw up things again. Let's go to each league here, see what we got. So Germany has got some prospects. Some of them are supposed to go mid-second round, so maybe a little bit better than this year. There's another Klinga, but he's not probably getting drafted. Switzerland, another guy that's supposed to go mid-second round, so there might be some more options to us this year. But who knows how good they actually are going to be. Looks like Czechia has a bunch as well early on. Austria, whoa! You do not see that very often. A guy that's playing in the Austrian league is going top 5, potentially. He's from Germany, but Thomas Bakos. That's interesting. Obviously, we won't be able to draft him unless we're absolutely terrible, but that's kind of neat. That's kind of neat. The SHL. There's a top 3 Swede. Bouwmeester's a late first rounder. Okay, that might be a decent defensive prospect. Cashman is a 4th rounder, I think, is not bad. Kilger. Looks like there's at least some Polish people. What about Finland? All right, there's some Norwegians. This guy's probably going to go too early, but we'll pin him anyways. But yeah, I think this class could have a bit more depth to it, but I don't know if it's going to be the strongest class on paper again, of course. But obviously, we don't really care too much about these drafts right now. Right now, our sights are on the Stanley Cup, but obviously, still, drafts are going to be important to make sure that we could still make the playoffs every year remaining in this mode. So, hopefully, we could do that at least. And hopefully, we come close to at least getting ourselves a Stanley Cup if we don't get one. You know, it's going to hurt more if we lose in the finals, I guess. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of our Europe United Draft to Glory franchise mode. So next episode, we will take it to another season simulation for 2041-42. As I think we're for sure going to be a playoff team. It's just more, like I said, managing that player morale on the ice time and all that. I need you guys' opinion. Should we just basically go off defensive awareness and put all the people that have good defensive awareness on the penalty kill, like Cutler, for instance, and then the people with good offensive awareness and people that matter the most, like the top line, of course, they should be on the power play with those really good defensemen like Paco and Lee? I'm not too sure, but I think we need to make some sort of moves to make sure that everybody stays happy, so that way when it comes to playoff time, we don't have guys in morale crises. So, let us know down below, and I'll see you guys next time.